Good New Year's.
Good New Year's and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here, and I am jacked up. I hope you guys have your ears tied back or everything tied on, your socks tied down, because I could not think of a better way to kick off our first recorded episode of the new year without having on an amazing guy who is just an advocate of change and making change take place the right way out there, who's worked with so many, not only just real estate entrepreneurs over his background and in the last years, decade plus out there. But this guy is just an amazing individual who's got a huge heart and likes really, I want to tell you this, likes to punch life in the face, likes to punch him in the mouth out there. And so today you're going to get some great stuff and wisdom from the mouth of not only a good friend of ours, but somebody that we reach out to whenever we are dealing with issues and things like that. We love to bounce ideas off of, and just has become just a great friend over the last few years. But the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Patrick Precourt, man. Good morning, good afternoon, buddy.
Good morning, good afternoon to you and to all of us listening right now. And that's a pretty cool welcoming there. So thank you for that. And dude, pumped as always to be here. You and I have done this in the past. I always look forward to coming back because there's always that much, they have so much more life experience in between each one to filter through what we already know. So we're gonna bring some cool stuff to the table today.
Yeah, so for those that are listening, because we got so many people across the country, actually across the world, from looking at our numbers over the last 3 years since we've been having the podcast here. Patrick, why don't you share a little bit kind of about you, who you are, kind of your background, before we dive into really kind of the knocking life in the mouth today.
Sure. So, I mean, as you know, Scott, I've been in the real estate space since the late 90s, right? It's, what I cut my teeth on is what we built a big business around. Love it. Will never not be in real estate because it's in my blood. And I think you know what I'm talking about. You know, once you got it, right? We got into the real estate education space, and it's been, a good part of the last 15 years in that space. And that evolved into, you can loosely call it personal development space, but it's really behavioral space, right? And understand personal development is a funny way to describe, and when I say personal development, the first thing we think, man, and not for me, because in order for me to need personal development, it must mean there's something wrong with me. And that ain't true, right?
Amen to that, yeah.
What's true is that we're all awesome, and we can all always get better and should get better and need to get better to fulfill our souls. That's true. We can't just sit on our laurels. And this is the funny thing about this discussion. Has nothing to do with what level you're at or what you think you're at. And that's one of those things that we get so caught up in, like comparing me and you and what I have or what you have and what I don't have and all that kind of stuff, when that is so irrelevant to the discussion. The only part that matters, man, is which way we're pointed, which way we're heading. And that goes back to that, that old cliche. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And that is so true in this discussion,
Oh man, it totally is the journey and the people you meet along the way. As Charlie Tremendous Jones has been known to say, in 5 years from now, we'll be the same people, except for the people that we meet in the books that we read. And that really dives into developing ourselves on the personal development side. And what I've found so interesting over the last couple of weeks is everybody's like, oh, I'm so glad 2019 is over. It was a horrible year, And I'm like, listen, things aren't going to change for 2020, unless you do something to change that, right, man?
Yeah. So let's start there. So here, this will bring us down a cool path, right? Because here's the thing, right? And you're right. 2020, heads up, is no different than 2019. The air is the same. The people are the same. The room you're in is the same. Everything's the same. I'm just being honest, right? Nothing's changed. So let's not trick ourselves into thinking that for some reason it's just different, because it's not. So let's start with this. And this is nothing new, right? We've heard this from, since when we were freaking 2 feet tall. In order to have something that we've never had, right, we've got to do something that we've never done. In order to do something we've never done, we've got to first become someone we haven't been. Be, do, have. That's the process. The challenge is we try to skip all that. We say, man, but if I could only have, then I would do, and then I'd become. If I only had the money, then I could do this work and I'd become a happy person. If I only had this, this great relationship, then I could do all these amazing things, and then I could be so grateful. You become, and it truly is in exact opposite direction, right? Because the second we focus on the have, but we haven't done the become, we don't have the skills to implement the do in order to deserve the have. And it's funny, right before you and I jumped on, Scott asked me, Pat, how's it going? I'm like, it's going awesome, man. The world delivers to me everything exactly to the degree that I deserve it all the time, good and bad. And that's how this universe works, right? So if we have a starting point, right, it's not about having. And this is where, this is the perfect time you have this discussion. This is where that idea of New Year's resolutions and goals comes into play, right? New Year's resolution, two most common are based around finance and based around fitness. So the two most common New Year's resolution. One is I want to lose weight, and the other one is I want to gain money, right? That's how those New Year's resolutions work. But for you to think for a second even that you can go out and lose 20 pounds over the next 4 months, becoming the same person you've been, you are sadly mistaken. If you think you can double or triple or quadruple your income in 2020, being the exact same person you've been in 2019, you are sadly mistaken. You will be let down very quickly. Now, here's a part of it, though, that gets us even earlier. We know this. Scott, we already know that nothing's going to change. And that's why by the end of January, beginning of February, most New Year's resolutions either have not begun or have already been quit. And we're back to the same old as 2019. Kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you said something really good about that. We attract exactly what we deserve, whether it's good or bad, and we attract a lot of the energy. We attract our success by the people we hang out with, our day-to-day activities, because life, you get out what you put into the whole thing. So if you're not working out, you're not going to lose weight. You're not going to, if you want to make more money, you got to put in more deals. It means more due diligence or more marketing versus, sitting around watching the bowl games that people have been doing. There's so many different facets to that aspect of it. How are people, what's your best counsel when it comes to helping people really find a way to really make the most of the new year to get closer to their goals than they were a year ago?
I guess so. That's a great question. It always starts with awareness, and awareness, step one of awareness is coming to terms with exactly where you are right now. No better, no worse, just where you are, right? This is ground zero, and understanding that what got you here will not move you any further, which means something fundamentally has to change. You take out marketing, right? We use marketing as an example. For some people, it says, all right, man, it's time to market. They immediately have an emotional that turns into a full visceral effect in their body that defaults to a negative emotion that they're going to lose money. Marketing, lose money. Therefore, their reaction or action to that emotion goes emotion, thought, decision, action, result, right? Take no action, no marketing goes out, or a reduced marketing, or kind of a half-ass effort at marketing, but they don't go all in. And if we think we can just change that, the answer is, well, we're going to be sadly mistaken. So to answer your question more specifically, once we get past awareness, is to understand our emotional responses and what triggers our actions. And at the end of the day, so let me bring you through a sequence here. I said, hey, Scott, do you believe that the way you feel affects the way you think? And you would say,
yes, definitely.
Of course, hell yeah, right? Do you believe that the way you think affects your decision making?
Hell yeah.
Right? And you think...
Got all sorts of noise buttons over here. Should have prepped you for that one.
Excellent. Does your decision making affect your action taking?
Yes.
And your action taking your results, of course,
yes.
Right? So we have a direct connection between the way we feel and the results we get in life. So our emotions, feeling, are directly responsible for the way we experience life. And until we get to that core level of change, nothing changes. Okay? So you say, well, all right, how do we do that? And one is awareness. When I say, hey, listen, man, what's your budget for marketing this month? Some people cringe right up because there's an emotional response, because there's a connection between marketing, dollars going out, spending, losses, pain, failure, all that stuff overwhelms them. and they're shut right down, right? So it's getting down to that core level. If you want a different result, we got to take a different action. But we first got to we have to have a different association with that. So it's becoming aware. So this falls under the topic of emotional intelligence, right? Becoming first aware of your emotions, the ones that serve you and the ones that hold you back, and then managing them, putting into play a way to change that, which we can do very, very simply. It takes when I say simply, it's simply by design, but it takes a committed, intentional effort. You come to me and say, Pat, man, got in an accident the other day. I go, what happened, Scott? Well, wasn't my fault. And I already know we're going down. I already know where we're going here. You go, yeah, I was getting off this exit. There's a lot of traffic, and this guy cut in front of me, cut me off, and I just, I got anger issues on the road rage. So I gave him the finger, and I laid on my horn. I tailgated him, and he checked his brakes. I swerved in and hit the guardrail. All right, time out, Scott. What was your desired outcome in that engagement? And at first you go, well, man, he cut me off. I'm like, did he really? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a path, right? And the path, as we go through this piece of emotional intelligence, one is becoming aware of the emotion. And anger is not a good emotion. It doesn't serve us in any way, shape, or form. That's an emotion you may struggle with, right? Let's become aware of it. And now let's recognize what triggers it. And now let's rewrite the path between the trigger and the emotion. Scott, what if you said he cut you off? You think he did it intentional. You just assume that, and you let it own you, and it wrecked your night. And whether or not you got in an accident is immaterial, because if you didn't, you still would have walked in your house that night completely upset, anger, because this guy got away with something, and you would have brought that energy into your spouse, and you would have said, hello, honey, but it would have come out with such a bad energy, it would have hit her like a punch in the face, and she would have responded with a certain tonality, not by intention, just matching your energy. And that would have triggered you even further, and before long, you guys are fighting and your night's over. It's happened to all of us, right? A different outcome. And this is how we change, how we become in order to do something different, in order to have something different. Guy cuts you off again. You've gone through this in your head. You've practiced this. This time, you remind yourself, you are by far the luckiest guy in the world, because he didn't see you. It wasn't intentional. It's accidental. He didn't see you, and he didn't hit you. You're not up in the guardrail or down in the valley right now. You're perfectly okay. You are going to get home. You're going to have a perfect evening tonight. Guess what? You roll down the window. You turn up the music. You express your gratitude for how amazingly lucky you are. There's no one as lucky as you are. And everything changes. And we keep walking through that experience in our head. Before long, we don't have to think about it. Somebody cuts us off. We're like, thank you. Right?
Yeah, right.
Bam! Winner again! And we've changed what happens next. And the question we have to always ask ourselves, hey man, Scott, you gonna do any marketing this month? You're like, how does that emotion align us with our desired results? Are they moving us right directly towards the outcome we want? Or are they peeling us off and going somewhere else? Mm-hmm. And that's like the core to creating change in our lives, right? Now, let's bring this all the way back to goals, whether they be fitness goals or, financial New Year's resolutions. When we set a goal, right, the goal is not the thing. And this is where we get way off base. We set a goal and we make it all about the goal, when in fact, for reasons we just described, we're not qualified to receive that goal yet, because nothing's changed. But instead of focusing on, let's use fitness as an example, right? Mm-hmm. You want to lose 30 pounds over the next 6 months, you can do that all day long. It's not a problem, right? But you've got to become someone different than you've become or that you've been so far. You've got to be a little more committed, a little more focused, a little more disciplined. You've got to change your behavior around working out and what goes in your mouth, right? All these things have got to change, but we don't focus on the behavior part of it. So we're ill prepared to ever start towards that goal. We focus on the goal, but not the behavior required to accomplish the goal. Never do we stop to realize the goal is not what it's all about. What it's about is changing our behavior, which ultimately creates a new habit. And a habit is nothing more than something that runs subconsciously in our life. But here's the fact of it, right? our habits are a reflection of who we are in life. Our entire life is nothing more than a display of our habits. You can look at somebody, not say a word to them, and fully understand who they are based on what they're representing out of the habits that they perform. And weight loss is just an easy one to document. The goal is not losing weight. That's a way to measure the changing of our habits. Because guess what? If the scale is continuously going down, week after week after week, it means that our habits are being altered. They're changing. And the goal is not to lose weight and be done with it. The goal is a sustained, healthful lifestyle, right? And that's new set of habits. Making money is no different, right? Making money is a habit. There's things you do, Scott, because you're very good at this, that you do on a daily basis. You repeat. You don't have to think about them. They're built in your subconscious. They're part of who you are. They're part of your daily habits that allow you to attract a strong abundance of wealth into your life, right? That didn't happen overnight. You weren't born that way. You know, in high school, you weren't driving like this big badass car. I don't think. I don't know. You know, it took repetition, intention. It took ways to measure it, which may have been financial goals along the way, but that was never the desired outcome. That's a way to measure our progress. Does that all kind of make sense?
It totally makes sense, Pat. I mean, that's the thing is it comes down to you're really having to reprogram your mind, the NLP aspect of things, of what you say and how you react, so that you do have a whole different set of responses than what you're programmed and doing. You know, in workout, my trainer always says muscle memory on what we do when you're doing an exercise or doing a form or mixed martial arts. You see a lot of this too, right? You're when it happens, when you fall on the mat, you got to do something with your legs or your arms to break the hold of the guy that's on top of you. And then that's the same way I think we have to approach life, is if we keep doing the one thing and we keep seeing the opposite result, it's because we haven't changed, as you say, very first off, the emotional response of how we want to happen when it happens. I love food. I find myself one of the biggest things at night when I'm kind of bored at the house. I'm a snacker. I'm like, I got to get up. So I did one of two things: either get rid of all the snacks or replace the snacks that aren't good with like fruits and vegetables and things like that. Get rid of all the Cokes and things like that. So you have to have actions, but know that you're the reason you're not finding the success is because the actions and the emotions you're having, right, Pat?
Yeah, 100%, you know. And you use food as an example. It's just, food's an easy one because it's so trackable. Here's a little weakness that we have. We tend to overestimate our willpower or our discipline, right? And this is just kind of a little tip on goal achievement, right? If we're going to set a goal, say you know your weaknesses. Pat, I graze at night, man. You know, by 6, 7 o'clock at night, I'm kind of brain dead and I graze, and it's just it's my habit. I get it, right? If that's the case, right, then a prudent move would be create an environment that's conducive to your success, which means, like you said, remove the stuff that does not serve you. Get it out of there, right? Because likely, as you're tired, you're getting ready for bed, it's 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, whenever you go to bed, right, and you want that last snack, likely you're not going to drive out to the store to get it, right? But if it's right there in that cabinet and nobody's going to even see as you walk by, take that thing, and, you know, likely it's going to happen, right? So a key to achieving is creating environments that are conducive to our success. Our physical surroundings is one very influential environment, right? Our people surroundings are a tremendously influential environment. You know, if you want to reduce or quit your drinking habits, but still you're going out with all your buddies that are always drinking, not only are they drinking, they feel bad about themselves when you're not drinking. So therefore they egg you into drinking. Guess what? That is not, well, we all got those buddies, right? That is not conducive to your success at stopping the drinking part. Let me share a process of learning, right? Because when we talk about goals and then we bring that down to behavior and habits, we have to appreciate that the habit side, right, goes through a process of learning. 95% of all of our decisions, we make thousands of decisions every day. 95% of them are made subconsciously, automatically. They're made through our habits because our brain can't handle making all these decisions. So it's just focused on a few tiny amount of like these important relative changing decision-making things that you have to deal with. All the rest is made out of habit. That's kind of funny why when we want to change we're like, let's deal with just a little 5% of critical thinking and analytical thinking, and think somehow that can overpower the 95% that's deeply seated in our subconscious. Does not happen, right? Let's talk about the learning process, though. And I'll use my daughter's driving as an example.
Hang on a second. I think this may have been the first sound that you had. Your daughter's driving. That's better than this, right?
Dude, I need some noisemakers, you know. That's awesome. That's funny. Turned 16, wants to learn how to drive. Like, all right, let's go drive. So I insist our kids learn on a manual stick car, you know. And I put her in a right-hand drive old Land Rover I have. That's left shift, right-hand drive. Just add a little element of challenge, right? Anyways, first thing I do is I say, Sam, go start the car. You know, so I'm in the passenger seat, she's in the driver's seat, turns over the key, thing lurches forward, right? Which I did intentionally. So she immediately went from an unconscious incompetence, meaning that we don't know what we don't know when we first set out to learn something new. And that's where it starts, right? And immediately upon starting the car, it jumping forward, scared the bejeepers out of her, right? She immediately went to a conscious incompetence. She really quickly realized she has no idea even how to start a car, right? She knows, but that awareness opens up our minds to learning. When we know that we don't know, right? Or like that this is like one of the flaws of kids as they go through the 20s and 30s. When they think they know it all, they shut themselves down to learning until we get older and finally realize that we don't even know what we don't know. That's where we're back to being sponges. But anyways, so we hop in the car and we repeat, stall, repeat, teach, guide, get a little better. Finally, right, we pull up to a stop sign, talking her through it. She's focusing. You know, clutch goes in, foot comes off the gas, goes onto the brake, stops the car, stop sign, doesn't stall. I'm like, yes. It's like, Dad, I know how to drive. I'm like, no, you don't. And this is a point, Scott, where a lot of us fail. Mm-hmm. We finally achieve it and we stop the learning process because we think we know it. But we don't. It's not a habit. It's not in the subconscious, not automated yet, right? So the very next stop sign we're pulling up to, as we're pulling up, just to let her know the truth here, I engage her with a question. Hey, Sam, when do you graduate next year? And she wasn't graduating next year, so it required a little critical thinking. And in doing so, stalled the car. Because it took her little 5% off of what she had to do, this very complex operation of timing and foot in, foot off, depress, all that kind of stuff, right? Which is a complicated little operation. Took that, didn't have enough critical thinking left to do it, put it into thinking about when she was graduating, which she wasn't, stalled the car. Said, see, Sam, just because you know how to do it does not mean you know how to do it, okay? So then we kept going, and probably about a week later, repetition. Now the learning speeds up though, because now it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. And finally pull up to another stop sign. I know she's got it because I see where she's at, you know. And I asked her again a complicated critical thinking question, and she stops the car, no problem. He answers the question, doesn't even acknowledge that she did this without thought. I'm like, Sam, you see what you just did? She's like, what? What did I just do? I'm like, that's it. You did it and you didn't even know you did it. Your body finally now knows better than your mind how to stop at a stop sign. Now you know how to drive. And when it comes to establishing new habits, that's where we typically drop the ball. We don't give it enough time through conscious effort, deliberate, purposeful, intentional effort, repeat until it's ingrained in our subconscious so it happens automatically. I talked to a lot of couples, and you know, you guys work together as a couple. You know, it's not always easy being entrepreneurs, working together as a couple. It's easy to butt heads. It's easy not to shut off work, right? So we spend a lot of time on mindfulness and finding quality time together, right? To make
that's
that.
Truth.
What's that?
I said that's the truth.
Yeah, and it takes an intention. Guess what? You take quality time as an example, and this is a behavior more than it is a task, right? Quality time is you setting aside deliberate time where you're both present in the same room and you showing up present, head and feet in the same place at the same time, which takes a tremendous amount of work. And to do that, say at least once a day, every day is hard until it's built into the subconscious. But it might take 60 days of repeating. And I've worked through this with many couples before, right? Until you guys get it to where and quality time is not quantity time. It could be 5 minutes where you guys are energetically and emotionally connected. Man, that could set you up for 24 hours, no problem. That's all it takes, right? It has nothing to do with spending a lot of time together. But I'm just using this as an example. Through repetition, you can train yourself to be able to create this quality time without even knowing it. It just happens when the right time is for it to happen, right? And that's just another example of how you becoming so that you could so you could have what you wanted to have in the first place. And you just want, as couples, we want a healthy, strong, happy relationship where we're not at each other's throats all the time. That's all. Fair enough, right? Pretty powerful stuff.
It totally is. And that's the thing is, and it also depends on too, if we want to dive into this, maybe a different time, but knowing what is that quality time. If you've ever read the book, the love languages, knowing what that person really wants. And that book, it's such a powerful book, not just for relationships, but also if you're dealing with clients or vendors or the public, trying to get an idea what really is that, that hot button that they're going to, communicate with and be able to have that quality time and being present, turn your cell phones off, whatever that is to hit that nail on the head so that you can actually, people like, wow, you really do listen, or you really are present when I'm talking versus instead of waiting to speak, you're actually truly listening, right?
It's funny you said it. And you're right. That's a whole nother, we'll do that one next week, right?
There you go.
But here's a key piece there, and you're kind of alluding to it, right? If I'm the one in charge of that, meaning I've taken responsibility for that, my job is to set the example. Go first. Be the one that shows up the way I want you to show up if you and I are doing a face-to-face meeting, or my spouse to show up. Now, I can't be responsible for another human's behavior, but I can certainly create an environment conducive to the results that we want. And again, that just, is controlling an environment to get a result that we want, right? And it's very, very easy to get you to match my energy in a face-to-face meeting, if that is my intention, right? So I have one more thing I want to share with everybody, Scott, before we wrap this call, right? Because there's still like a bit of a disconnect sometimes between, all right, what's next, right? How do we leave here and create change by tomorrow morning, right? And the truth is we can, but we have to understand a few keywords or a few keys to this process, right? Think about if we were a transmitting radio. Most radios just receive, but say it's like a VHF, it's a little different frequency, but we transmit and receive, okay? What we think about would be our transmission out to the world, the universe, and what we feel would be our receiving back, okay? Now, in the guru world, we're all told to get vision boards, right? And put up shit on the wall that we want to have. Cool. Excellent. Because they can, if used right, they become emotional triggers. But typically, we just put the stuff up there and then stare at it and be like, why isn't this stuff manifesting yet? Right? Like,
I read the book. I threw it on the wall. Why is it not here tomorrow?
Yeah. Why is it not coming? Like, why isn't a boat driving itself into my yard right now? What happened? Right. And the funny thing is, because it's kind of funny when you think about it, to think that could happen, but there is some teeth behind this, but we have to add the other two layers, right? The vision board serves no other reason than to focus our thought. That's it. What is it you want? And when we create goals, one of the key part of creating a goal is adding meaning to it. Why? Because the meaning is what gives it really authority. That's where, because at the end of the day, hey, what's your financial goal for this? I want to make $1 million. Money has no emotion attached to it. There's no meaning to it until we give it meaning. But the money isn't meaning. What the money can do for us starts going down the path of meaning and walking down that path, right? So we got this vision board. We got all this cool stuff on it. All that does is focus our thoughts, right? But we got to dig a little deeper and understand, what does that stuff really mean to me? How does it matter? And this is where we start bridging the gap to the lower part of this triangle, right? Ask yourself, what's it like to have accomplished that, to be there, to have that? And that's why I don't like vision boards being a whole bunch of materialistic stuff, right? That's kind of a challenge with how most people build them. They're good they're good in the sense of it allows you to focus on an emotional trigger, but they're not so good if they're just outward based physical things trying to make you somebody that you're not, because it doesn't work that way. But if we put the right things on a vision board, it might be of your family on a vacation somewhere, right? As an example. You say, well, what is that? For me to do that for those 2 weeks, what's it going to be like? How's that going to feel when I actually do that? And now what you're doing is you're taking the thinking and pulling it over to feeling, the receiving side, and fully internalizing the emotion that goes along with it. And this is where the magic starts to happen, okay? Because if you think one way but feel another way, you put a big $1 million board picture bill on your board. Yeah, I can never own that. I'll never get that. I'm not worthy of that. If you think one way and feel another, you'll still end up with a negative. A positive and negative always work as a negative. Can't beat that, right? But if you think and feel in harmony, right, then what you put out has a path to come back. And this is where the magic takes place. When think about this. Think about thinking about something and feeling about that same thing. It cannot, for the reasons you and I discussed earlier, we'll connect these dots back, it cannot not alter your behavior. There's only two things that decide what we do: how we think and how we feel. And when we think and feel in a very focused way towards a desired outcome, it alters what we do. Think, feel, act. And when we put those three together towards one desired future event that has not happened yet, our body starts experiencing it in real time as if it already has happened. It does not know the difference, which then starts attracting into our lives at uber light speed the outcomes that we want. This is the backbone to Think and Grow Rich, to The Secret, to any of these types of books you may have heard of or read, right? Around thinking and receiving and manifestation. Unfortunately, we always stop at, hey, the vision board, look at that, but it's a process.
Right.
And the more we repeat it, the more it becomes real, the more we can manifest. So this brings in a topic, and I don't want to get too off base here, but this is where like true meditation comes in. Mm-hmm. Meditation is nothing more than state control, putting yourself in a state. Like I said, and people do this backwards too, as an example. People get stuck, like a bad event will happen in somebody's life, an emotionally traumatic event, and they'll keep reliving it. And the body doesn't know the difference between having lived through the event the first time and the reliving of the event today. And they'll have the exact same negative visual effect to it. That same chemical concoction that got released the first time will get released again and again and again. And it goes as far as they can get addicted to the chemicals that our body produces around that negative, bad behavior. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
We're flip-flopping it and bringing it to the other side, right? Yeah. And saying, oh, well, if it works that way, which it does. I mean, look at people who have been in, and leave aside clinically depressed, because that's a different space of people, right? But people who've been depressed over long periods of time, which doesn't mean it's clinical. It just means they keep reliving the same crap in their lives. And it creates this kind of victim mentality about it, right? We can completely use that in our advantage. Get focused on a future event that hasn't happened yet. Experience what it's like as if we're living through it today. Feel it. And let the way we think and feel alter the way we act. And that behavior is such that we're acting as if we're there. And this isn't faking it till you're making it. It has nothing to do with that, okay? It's just conceptualizing the entire process. Powerful, powerful tool.
Basically sitting down, thinking about what you're doing, talking to yourself, what what does it feel like? How do you feel emotionally? What do you sense? What do you see? What are you eating? Kind of the habits that are going into hitting those points off really can help you visualize that aspect of it and manifest it, because it puts you in the right mindset, and you start opening yourself up for those positive things to happen and reprogramming your neural network with your mind to be open to it and achieving success. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. So say, Scott, what would a lifestyle of, say, a note buyer with a modest $7 to $10 million net worth in their note assets look like? What does their day look like? What does their decision making look like? What is their behavior each day? How do they take care of their body? What do they do with their family in the morning before they head off to work and school, right? And we start, all right, well, what are those? Because guess what? The habits of them, right, are all we're trying to get teachers or train ourselves into. This is not that they're not different people than us. They just do different things. But walk us through, right? Whatever your big vision is, your big, hairy, audacious goal is, what's it like? What would you do differently then than you do now? Well, man, I wouldn't stress as much. Well, stress is a choice, because stressing doesn't change anything. Stress doesn't make you a better person, doesn't make you more alert, doesn't make you more empowered, right? So if you wouldn't stress more then, why do you stress more now?
Mm-hmm.
That you can change right now, right? Why be happier? Well, happier has nothing to do with finances, because there's nothing money can do for you that'll make you happy. And a perfect example of it, there's many that have chosen a life of poverty, but are the most fulfilled, at peace, happy people that walk the face of this earth, right? And by our definition, they live in a state of poverty. Like, well, how is that? Well, they didn't have to wait for money to make them happy, because they realize that nothing out here is responsible for that choice. And it is a choice. That all comes from within. And what if you have to experience, let's say it takes 5 years to get to where you want to be financially. All right, 60 months, I get it. Well, if you got to do those 5 years, and it's going to be work, it's going to be a grind, it's going to be highs and lows, would you rather do it happy, or would you rather do it stressed and full of anxiety and having to rely on a drink at the end of the day just to get out of the day? Which one would you rather be? Because you're going to put in the same time, the same work, trying to make the same moves, but you can enjoy it or you can fight it, And that's the kind of choice we got to start thinking about.
That's such a truth, because you can either choose to be happy or choose to be angry and bitter, and what you're going to end up with at the end of that 60 months is more bitterness or happiness. Is all going to be what you end up to. Yeah, you may hit your goal, but your family may not be around because you've been such an asshole. Along the way.
You bring up a really big point. This is something we got to embrace, man. And I see this again. And so my typical client, right, is 45 to 55 years old, right? And most of them are, by most of our definitions, financially successful, right? Mm-hmm. Freaking miserable, because they thought that when they got to it, when they arrived, happiness would be there waiting for them. And it wasn't. And to what you just said, for a lot of them, it's because they burnt a lot of bridges along the way. They burnt down some marriages. They have kids that really don't respect them. They have friends. The only time the friends will hang out is if they're buying dinner, that kind of stuff. And they're like, I'm here, happiness, I'm ready. Well, it ain't out here. Final thing on this, right? When we come to a place of peace with ourselves, and we can embrace happiness now, here and now, right? Whatever it is we think we need in the future, we can attract so much faster, light speed into our lives, because we're already portraying the actions, the becoming and the doing that is deserving of having that, right? And of all the things we've already spoken of, if we don't express those, the becoming and the doing, we don't become deserving, we'll be chasing it to our grave. And there's no one listening right now who does not know that to be true, Scott. Mm-hmm. We don't always want to accept it, right? but we know it to be true. A lot of us can look back on our lives right now, say, man, I remember back in college, I knew I'd be happy when I graduated, but I wasn't. Then I knew I'd be happy when I got married, but I wasn't. Then I knew I'd be happy when I finally got that car, and that didn't do it either. Then the house, and that sure as hell didn't do it. Then the kids, well, that just added more stress. Now, if I could do is just make a shit ton more money, I'd be happy. Well, at some point, we gotta stop buying into that little story. And here's the cool thing, and this is where I see it happen again and again and again and again, man. The second this light switch turns, right? I'm like, I get it. I don't know. I'm gonna try it, and we go through. It doesn't just happen all at once. Recognizing the accepting of it can happen on a light switch, but that takes a little practice, right? Because we're so trained to be angry and to be mad and to be victim and to blame and to compare. And every time we compare, we don't, at first we see what they have, then we see what we don't have. Then we see this big bucket of lack in the middle. And that's what we focus on. And it goes back to this crappy feeling and how we're not successful. And, we're 54 years old and they're so much further than us. And all this stuff overwhelms us. And that increases the gap between where we are and where we want to be. But we've trained ourselves. So the retraining out of that and just being present and just appreciating that there are a quadrillion people in this world. And this is to everyone who's listening right now. There are so many people in this world that would love to be you on any given day. And that is true because there's a lot in a lot worse position than you. That is true. So if you're going to get in a comparing game, compare both sides of the aisle and you'll say you're equal, right? Now push that aside and get back into, all right, man, I got to figure out a way where I can embrace today, appreciate today for as good as for bad it is. I just had this conversation with my kids the other day about failure because kids are so beat down on the term of failure. Like failure is bad. Right? You and I we went through the same school system. They even give us a nice big letter when we fail, an F, right? They brand us. God forbid you get an F, right? But failure is, it's habitually bad. What if for a second you replace the word failure with the word discovery? And I said, Scott, it's Sunday night. You and I are chatting. We're getting each other jacked up for the week. Dude, what are you going to go discover this week? It completely changes the way our mind thinks. When we discover, we open up. We learn, we grow, we bring in, we're sponges. Failure, we close up, we protect, right? And the risk of failure will keep us forever clamped down. Can't grow. The opportunity to discover, right? Wide open, man. Fail forward, let's go for it, right?
I love it.
Simple little play on words, brother.
It is a little bit. It's little things like that every day, every hour when we're dealing with life and things like that. Now, Pat, you've been working with entrepreneurs for years, and you're doing something really cool now. We talked about a few weeks ago when you called me up. We were talking about podcasting, kind of what you're focused on. And I mean, you've been helping so many entrepreneurs. I mean, we got so many mutual friends you've sat down with and helped, and you're really kind of doing something cool here this year. You want to take a few minutes to talk about kind of the things you're doing and some of the, I think, the retreats that you're working with people? Yeah.
So besides launching a podcast with your help and your tutelage, which I couldn't thank you enough for, right? Yeah, we have one of our, it's finally mainstream. I've always brought a lot of what our training and our teaching in small group environments, right? In terms of, it was never kind of out here, but now we're opening up to a bigger population. And in doing so, it makes it a lot easier financial for people to be involved. But effectively what it is everything I've talked about here, right? We have built into a systematic way where all you do is plug in one end, go through it, and get kicked out the other end with the new habits that you now have become in order to deserve anything that you want in this world, right? And it's really, really cool. And the way we do it has daily engagement in terms of, we've all heard the idea of having a business KPI dashboard, right? Key performance indicators that we monitor. Well, I break it down to personalized KPI dashboards that are based on behavioral change. So that every day we monitor how our behavior is being altered and bringing an awareness around, just like I did with my daughter driving the car, going through those 4 stages of learning, right? So by the time we get to the other end of it, man, we're unconsciously competent in whatever it is we need to change. And there's nothing, Scott, nothing that cannot be altered. I don't care if somebody's out there listening and say, Pat, man, I have fought my entire life trying to lose weight. Not a problem. Not a problem. Pat, I've always had a problem making money. You don't have a problem making money. You have a problem practicing the right habits that attract money into your life. I mean, you'd admit this, and I admit this. You and I aren't the brightest guys out there, right? But we're successful by many people's definition, right? And it's not because we're super smart. It's because of the habits that we've eventually learned into our life. And some of them are learned through doing the wrong habits repeatedly.
The discovery of those habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could create a list a mile long of exactly what not to do in order to get the results you want, right? I got that list. And I'm not done. I keep adding to that list and keep making it bigger. So it's a program designed for anyone. I don't care if you work for somebody else right now and a W-2, and there's something you want to alter in your life. I don't care if it's in your relationship space, in finances, in your physical health and wellness. And I don't think I mentioned this, but we own, I call it a lifestyle fitness center, but it has a heart and culture of our martial arts. And that's why you hear me bring up gym and physical stuff a lot, because we do everything from, yoga and Pilates and cardio kickboxing all the way over to MMA cage fighting and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and all that kind of stuff, right? So the physical aspects of it are a big thing to me, but I also know you can't succeed physically without first succeeding mentally, right? And the connection between mental, emotional, and physical, you cannot break those things apart, So, if anybody's interested in this type of program, and I'll be honest with you, man, it's very results centric, meaning that it's not one of those things where you come in passively, kind of hang out in, and that's if that's what you're looking for, and I don't know anything like that'll work for you. This is not the place. Okay, if you're looking for something that's got a very structured process to it, that is result-centered, that gives you daily feedback that's focused on behavioral change, but measured by goal achievement. Focus on behavioral change, measured on goal achievement. That's a measuring device we use to see if the behaviors are being changed, right? Then, man, check in, message me or, go to one of our sites and just say, hey, Pat, love to have a conversation. Everybody that comes in has to sit and have a conversation with me. And it always starts the same thing, man. Scott, what are you looking to do, brother? What do you want to see as an outcome? And some people will say some crazy things, and I'm like, I'm not your guy. I get it, but given our time, what you want to do, go. If we can scale that back and focus on, some behavioral change, I understand. But everything you just came up with, and I say that in a context of when somebody comes to me with that, it's just ain't plausible for a billion different reasons, meaning, and it's usually because there's a reason behind it. The meaning part doesn't make any sense, and I pull that out of people, without, there's nothing you or I or anyone else can do that has any real gravity to it. Nothing we can do unless we have a reason, a real meaning in doing it in the first place, or it's just not going to happen.
What's the best way for them to get more information on you or to find out about what you've got scheduled or different opportunities there for you, Pat?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just go to my website, PatrickPrecourt.com. Patrick is spelled Patrick, and the last name is P as in Peter, RECOURT.com, PatrickPrecourt.com. And we have up there right now our historically our most ever downloaded ebook. It's really cool. It's called Live Big, right? And it's something that's kind of like a lifestyle culture that I came up with, I think about 2 years ago. It's what these bracelets, can't really see them. These bracelets, these Live Big bracelets are branded after. It's a neat little download ebook that, if you just go there and grab that too. And if anybody has, wants to just have a conversation of just to know what's possible, just message me, reach out to me. We can talk further. Super cool stuff, man.
Awesome stuff. We've had Pat on as a keynote speaker for a couple of our Note Camp events over the last couple of years. Always when you've been on there, the highest rated speaker, the most views, the most attendance and stuff like that. And we always give such positive feedback. And I think it's time to do it again this year for you here the next time we have one.
You know I'm there, brother.
Amen to that, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for taking time in your busy schedule. Always showing up, Pat. And we appreciate it. We look forward to hanging out with you some more here in the near future. All right, man?
Yeah, honored to be here and have an awesome 2020, brother.
There you go. Go out, everybody. Hey, go out. Take like what Pat said. You control your programming. You control what you put into your mind, your actions, which results in the outcome of what you want to achieve. So go out there, live big, like Pat was talking about. And if you do that, I guarantee we'll see you all at the top, everybody.